Vegetable Dauphinoise, my take on a classic French potato bake. So typically in a gratin dauphinoise, you would use potatoes. I've got roast potatoes here, but just for a nice autumnal twist, what we're going to do today is use parsnips and this wonderful vegetable called celeriac. So you can see it's quite an amazing shape and look to it. So celeriac is the root, the tuber of the celery plant. So it has quite an unusual taste and it's quite sweet. A little hint of parsley to it, a lot of people can pick up, and a slight hint of celery. So it works really well combined with other root vegetables because it's really, really fibrous. So you'll need a couple of tools to deal with these three vegetables because you want them really thinly sliced. So for the potatoes, we've got them thinly sliced here, same with celeriac and with the parsnips. So a couple of weapons that you can use. I have a handheld mandolin here and then just an ordinary vegetable peeler. This happens to be quite a good Y-shaped peeler. So for the parsnips, what you do is just peel them. Now you're going to discard this outer peel. Okay, get rid of that. And then you just carry on peeling. So because they're quite fibrous, this is going to give you the nice thin texture that you need in order for the bake to cook through. So you just carry on going. So we've got these thin ribbons of parsnip. That looks fantastic. And you'll notice I've got all the vegetables in lemon water, and this just prevents them from going brown. Quite simply, because they oxidize quite quickly. And then your celeriac, you'll have to peel the bottom with a knife because that's very knobbly. But the top of it, you can again just take your very sharp peeler to. Just have a go at it. But celeriac particularly does discolor really, really quickly. And I would almost even cook it with a bit of lemon in. So if you're steaming celeriac, just if you're making a mash or maybe a soup or something like that, you want to lightly steam it first, add a bit of lemon. And to this, we can then apply our mandolin. And you'll see that this is a great little tool, and you'll get really, really thin slices. Now, what I would recommend is obviously cutting this into maybe 3 or 4 pieces so it's easier for you to hold. And very importantly, stab it with the little guard when you're using a smaller piece. So just to demonstrate that, let's put a potato on the top, stab it, and you can see that that will hold it nice and securely. And you're not going to take off any bits of finger. You don't want any extra protein in your dauphinoise. So this is our 3 root vegetable dauphinoise. So we're going to have to layer up the raw root slivers, and in between the layers we're going to season it up with freshly ground nutmeg, a wonderful, wonderful spice, some crushed garlic, and some sautéed onion. So I've already cooked up the onion with some thyme, because I think thyme gives a lovely flavor to onion, and you want to cook it down quite slowly until it starts to caramelize. So just be a little bit patient with your layering. Shake off the excess water. You might want to even give this a little dab on a tea towel just to make sure it's completely dried off, not too waterlogged. Quite a thin layer, because you want each vegetable to have its equal and fair turn. Okay, so that's that bit. And now for our seasoning, a little bit of fresh nutmeg, salt and pepper. Now be quite generous with your seasoning because the vegetables that we're using, particularly the celeriac and the parsnip, are very, very sweet. So you want to be able to juxtapose that with the thyme and the onion, the garlic and the nutmeg. So a thin layer of onion going in, get rid of the little thyme twig, and then some parsnip. Another fantastic autumn vegetable, parsnip. And this is actually a wonderful dish as a potato alternative for Christmas. Because in Ireland, certainly, we have to have at least 2 varieties of potato at a meal. So by having quite a fancy dish like this, it's perfect for any sort of festive occasion. So we start the whole process over again. A little bit of onion. And the lovely thing about this, you can actually make it the day ahead. And then come Christmas Day, besides taking the stress off of the festive preparations, it will taste even nicer because the garlic and the nutmeg and all the lovely flavors would have had a chance to permeate. So seasoning again. You want to try and pack these layers as tightly as possible. We're going to give them a good squash when we've finished doing them. And we're going to pour over a generous glug of fresh cream. Now you can put cheese on the top. I wouldn't really for this particular recipe because the cheese with the sweetness of the celeriac and the parsnips, in my mind, wouldn't particularly go. But if you're an absolute cheese lover, go for it. I'm rather going to put some little nubs of butter, and that will help everything go brown and crispy. Okay, let me just get rid of these twigs altogether. There we go. So a little bit of onion, spread it out. So you'll need about 2 onions for this. If they're looking quite small, use a little bit more. Some nutmeg, and then we start the whole process all over again until we've reached the top of the dish, give another good squash down, and then add another 2 layers, even if you think you can't fit in any more. Because you'd be surprised at how much you can compress it. And the more you can compress a dauphinoise, the nicer the texture actually is. It goes from being a little bit soft and mushy to nice and firm. So what you're hoping to achieve by keeping your root vegetables under lemon water, which we call acidulated water, is to keep them snowy white like these are. Otherwise they turn a grey colour, and that's just not very nice to look at, especially if you're having this lovely dish on Christmas Day. So I'm going to squash in another layer. I'm going to finish off with potato. Now I'm making quite a small dauphinoise. There's no harm in doing 2 of these. So once you start and you've done your prep, you might as well carry on going. And you'll then have one for the day after Christmas and Stephen's Day, or where I'm from in South Africa, we call that Boxing Day. So normally in a family, there'll be one family member that insists on a certain sort of dish or vegetable for Christmas. So it could be mushy peas, it could be Brussels sprouts or whatever. But I do think that in your festive entertaining this year, it might be a lovely idea to add a new addition to the traditional family Christmas, and hopefully this will become a firm favourite. But I think nothing can really beat a dauphinoise. I mean, what's there not to like about baked potato with loads and loads of cream and seasoning? So as you can see, I'm pushing down. I'm making sure that there's a layer of potato covering the parsnip. And what I sometimes even do, just to make sure all the little gaps are filled, is I slide some extra potato down the sides. But this one actually looks quite solid the way we've done it. So squash it down. And that's going to really compress it, get all the air out before we pour over our cream. So once the cream has gone over, I'll season the very final layer and put little knobs of butter over it that will melt and help it to go lovely and golden on the top. So that's instead of, so that's 1 whole carton of cream. Don't be alarmed, it's Christmas. You can go for something a little bit richer and more decadent. So what I recommend doing is giving it a good shake, making sure that cream has gone right down to the bottom of the dish before adding another layer of cream. So we'll open up another carton. It's easier to manage a slightly smaller dauphinoise than maybe a very large one. It's easier to get it to cook through. So remember, we're cooking these vegetables straight from raw. We haven't blanched them, meaning we haven't plunged them in boiling water, we haven't partly steamed them. This is the only cooking it's going to get. So a gratin this size would take about 45 minutes at 180 degrees. And the way to test it is just to stab it with a dinner knife, because that's quite blunt. And if it goes through, it's probably going to be cooked through. But you do want it to have a little bit of texture still. So a few little nubs of butter. So if we don't have enough calories, as I said, this is a classic French dish. They're not exactly afraid of cream and butter. So there we go. So this is a lovely twist to the traditional gratin dauphinoise. So we do have the lovely flavours from the celeriac and the parsnip that are really interesting. Go very well with your Christmas turkey, with your ham. Celeriac especially goes very well with pork. So it would make a lovely, lovely combination. So a little final sprinkling of nutmeg. So that will work for aesthetic reasons and also savoury reasons, people think of nutmeg as a sweet spice, where in fact it gives a wonderful savoury taste to vegetables, especially green vegetables, and also to chicken. It's a magic ingredient I discovered when I lived in Italy that is wonderful flavouring for chicken. So give this another little gentle shake. There's plenty of cream in there, it's not going to go dry. So we're going to pop this into the oven for about half an hour, come and check on it and see if it needs maybe another 15 minutes. So there we go, our root vegetable dauphinoise is in the oven, so we'll see you back here shortly. My kitchen is smelling absolutely delicious with the gorgeous aroma of root vegetable dauphinoise. So it's bubbling away, it's lovely and golden on top, so I'm going to bring it out of the oven. Oh, wow, just look at that. So that is my take on a classic gratin dauphinoise, and this is our autumnal root vegetable dauphinoise.